Hey everyone, how's it going? Today I have a request to do a comparison between the first generation Moto G and the second generation Moto E. This is the Verizon model, this is the Boost Mobile model. Now they do have different models out for the Moto G first generation. They had them for Sprint, they had them for Boost, they had them for Cricket, and Verizon, all them different carriers. This variant here and the Boost Mobile come in 3G, while the Cricket model comes in either LTE or HSPA Plus. Not really sure, but basically the same phone, other than the fact that Cricket adds a micro SD card slot. So anyway, I'm going to give you some of the specs on both of these phones, tell you what I think about them, some of the pros and the cons of each of these phones, and just go through everything that I can think of and try not to take forever doing it. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start first with the Moto G, and then we'll switch over to the Moto E after each thing is said. The Moto G runs Android 4.4.4. It's supposed to get the Lollipop 5.0 update sometime, actually now. For some reason this one here is not updated yet. The Moto E, second generation, runs Android 5.0 Lollipop and is expected to get 5.1 here soon. Both of these phones have a 4.5-inch display. The Moto G has a 720 by 1280 resolution, while the Moto E has 540 by 960. Moto G has 329 ppi. Moto E has 245 ppi. They both have scratch-resistant glass with cornering Gorilla Glass 3. Both of these phones have 5-megapixel cameras on the rear. The only difference is the Moto G has a flash on the rear, while the Moto E does not. Camcorders, both of them record in 720p HD at 30 frames per second. The Moto G has a 1.3 megapixel front-facing camera and can record in 720p in the front, while the Moto E has a VGA front-facing camera and can only record in VGA quality. Onto the processor, the Moto G has a 1.2 GHz quad-core Snapdragon 400 processor with an Adreno 305 GPU with 1 GB of RAM with 8 GB of built-in storage, with around 5 GB available to user. The Moto E has a 1.2 GHz quad-core Snapdragon 410 processor with an Adreno 306 GPU with 1 GB of RAM with 8 GB of built-in storage, and it will support up to a 32 GB micro SD card, although I have heard that it will support up to 128 GB of an SD card. There is no micro SD card slot in the Moto G first generation. Batteries, Moto G has a 2070 mAh battery. Moto E has a 2390 mAh battery. Like I made mention, the Verizon model and the Boost model only have support of 3G only, while the Moto E second generation has LTE compatibility with Sprint's Spark network. So, and they both have Bluetooth 4.0. And that's all I want to say right now about these phones. The Moto G was announced November of 2013, and the Moto E was announced February of 2015. So there is some differences with these phones. Some are good, some are bad. So we're going to go ahead and get into it a little bit here. We'll start off with the Moto E. You'll see it has a front-facing speaker here. You'll have the proximity and ambient light sensors here, front-facing camera, your on-screen keys here for your back, home, and recents button. On the bottom is your micro USB charging port. Left side is clean. On top is your headset jack. On the right is your power and your volume rocker. On the back is your microphone and your camera. Microphone is here on the back. Now the back cannot be removed on this phone, but it does have a band around here that unsnaps that reveals your micro SIM card and your micro SD card slot, and you can change the colors of the bands to whatever color you want, whether it be red, blue, green, whatever you like, and it kind of gives it a distinct look around the edges, so that's pretty cool. Over here on the Moto G, you got your ear speaker here on top, your front-facing camera. You do have a light here for notifications somewhere up top, and also I forgot to mention that the Moto E does have a notification, just not a light. Whenever you get a message or any kind of notification, the screen does light up to show you what what you have coming in. You also have on-screen back, home, and menu button on the bottom here. You have your micro USB charging port. On the left side here, it is smooth. On the back is your single rear speaker, your camera, your flash. The right side is your power and your volume rocker, and on top is your headset jack. The back of this phone can be removed, but the battery cannot be removed, and it does not have a micro SD card slot, so you're pretty much stuck with just 5 gigabytes of on phone storage. But you can change the back color to whatever you want to. Now, when I power these two phones on, like I said, the Moto E is 540 by 960, and the Moto G is 720 HD. And you'll be able to tell that both brightnesses are the same. So we'll go ahead and get them powered up here and see if we can get it to focus in. There we go. As you can tell here, and I can tell it a lot better, the Moto G does have significantly better screen quality, but the Moto E is no slouch either. Both of them are very smooth phones. Now checking for the PRL update for some reason. Anyway, we'll go over here. Both of these phones here are very smooth. I have very few apps on the Moto G because it's not been used in forever. But as you see here, I've pretty much got the Moto E loaded down with apps and stuff like that. So we're going to look at some of these benchmark tests that I have ran on these phones. One is in the gallery, and I'll go ahead and I will find that here in the screenshot. Just give me a second here to pull it up. For some reason, the screenshot did not take a hold on the Moto G. It came in at $21,696. And we'll see if it'll pull up here. Yeah, $18,524 on the Moto G and $21,696 on the Moto E. Of course, that's thanks to the 410 64-bit chip processor versus the 432-bit chip processor. We'll back out of here. We will go ahead right now and run a Geekbench test on both of these phones. Now, like I said before, and may mention, I don't hold much stock in these benchmark tests. I just run them because I like to see what they run. You know, just to see the difference. So let's go ahead and start these at the same time if possible. And we will go ahead and wait for these to finish. Both of these phones are very nice. To me, to be honest with you, the Moto E does feel a little bit better made. It is splash resistant. I'm not really sure about the Moto G. Pretty much the phones are a lot alike, and I'm expecting the Moto G first generation to get 5.0 Lollipop, but I've not got it yet on this device. So reception, of course, with Verizon is better in my network, in my area, than Boost Mobile. And I am doing all this on Wi-Fi because while the Moto E is activated, the Moto G is not, because I do not have Verizon. This is just an old phone that I had from when it first came out. So we'll wait for these tests here to finish. There's nothing really wrong with either one of these phones. It's just really a matter of preference. Now, I know with a lot of people, including myself, the 3G, if you're on Boost Mobile and the Verizon model are basically the same exact phone. And, you know, if you're only in a 3G network area and your whole area is in and around 3G, you know, it might be a good option for you. You can get them because you can get them for a good price, cheaper than the Moto E 2nd generation. And you have, you know, of course, a 720 front-facing camera, and you know, and all that stuff. Okay, here we got finished, and we see here that the single core is almost 100 points higher on the Moto E, while it's just a few hundred points higher on the Moto E on the multi-core score. So not much difference, but enough to be able to tell on gameplay and stuff of that nature. One more test. Quadrant. Like I say, call quality is excellent. The single rear speaker on the back of the Moto G is very powerful, and you really have no trouble hearing it. But I just don't really care much about rear speakers. That's why I like the Moto E, where the speakerphone, and when it rings and you can watch YouTube with the phone laying down, and you have very clear sound out of the front speaker. Whereas it's on the back of the Moto G. Like I was saying earlier, you know, 3G, if that's all you have, this will be an excellent phone. It's very reliable. The screen looks awesome, and I mean, it's just a good phone. Both of them are really good phones. I got nothing really bad to say about either one of these phones. As you can see here, you know, the Moto G is much clearer than the more of a washed out looking look on the screen of the Moto E, but it's still not that bad. So we'll try to focus in here on the Moto G, and it's pushing 8,989, and I'm trying to focus here, but it won't focus for me. Over here on the Moto E, we are pushing 13,736, so much higher on the Moto E, and it's actually being as high as 14,500, so it's a little bit less than it was. But, you know, the general idea pretty much is the fact that the Moto E 2nd generation is just more powerful than the Moto G. And to be honest with you, battery life is better on the Moto E than the Moto G. From previous experience on both phones, even on Lollipop, it does seem to run better. I like the way that the menu settings and all are, and everything on the Moto G, even though it's kind of hard to see, it's kind of washed out with the... I got the brightness down a lot. Let me go in here and lower it even more, just see if I can get it to just show up better. But I like the way that everything here looks, and it's just very smooth, a very smooth phone. And it does have its lag, it does have its problems every once in a while with reboots and restarts, but for the most part it's a very smooth phone, just like over here on the Moto G. Now the drop downs, I do like the way these here on the Lollipop version is, where you got your Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and all these here. You got invert colors on here to kind of make it go completely different and look a whole lot different. Yeah, as you see there. Over here, pull down, you can switch around, and you got all your stuff here as well. So, you know, it's anybody's preference. If you're in an LTE network, I wouldn't recommend the Moto G over the Moto E. Both of them are 4.5-inch screens. Sure, you're taking a decreased look in the screen quality, but you're going to be looking at better battery life because it's not HD. Number 2, you get LTE instead of just plain old 3G. You're adding a micro SD card slot on the Moto E instead of just having the internal storage, which is very fast to use up on the Moto G. You get 5.0 Lollipop on the Moto E, while you're stuck on 4.4 on the Boost Mobile version, which it may be updated by now. I'm not sure. I don't own one, and don't plan on owning one because it's not got LTE compatibility. And the plan that I'm on Boost Mobile, and the only way I can have my plan is if I have an LTE phone connected to my plan. So therefore, unless it's LTE, I don't buy the phone. But and then the front-facing camera is a nice touch as well. The phone feels more solid than the Moto G. This phone here, it's better. It feels better in the hand. This phone right here feels good in the hand too. It's a little more slick, but it's just pretty much whatever anybody's preference is. Both of them are good phones, like I said. Both of them have good call quality. Reception is fair on both phones. So it is what it is. That's really about all I really want to say about these two phones. The pros of the Moto E 2nd generation is the front-facing speaker. The screen quality is good, battery life is good, expandable memory, a better processor, and exceptional call quality. Some of the cons is, of course, the lower screen resolution, and that's about it. On the Moto G, you get 720p recording the front-facing camera. You have a 720 display, which is very nice, crisp, and clear. And that's about it, really, I can think of at the moment. Really good call quality as well, and stuff like that. The bads is no micro SD card slot, speakers on the rear of the phone, 3G compatibility only, and so yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's just anybody's preference. I know it's kind of scattered. I know it's not much of a comparison, but I'm in 18 minutes into this video here, and I can't think of nothing else to say. So if anybody has any questions or comments about either one of these phones that I may have missed, let me know in the comment section below. If you ain't already, subscribe to my channel. I sure would really appreciate it. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. So y'all have a good one, and we'll see you in the next video.